Hi, I'm Dawn Stevens with the Mom's Choice Awards. I have with us Dirk Wales, who's the author of A Lucky Dog. Dirk, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dawn. You know, I thought maybe I would share with some of your viewers what I've learned since this book came out in the fall. But first, I need to tell you how much the Mom's Choice Awards have meant to me. Personally, and of course to the books, of course. But what I've found out is that I got my 5th award from Mom's Choice for this book, and that I'm being considered for the Mom's Choice Hall of Fame. The Mom's Choice Hall of Fame? Wow.
That's wonderful.
Isn't that good?
That's great.
So, I've learned a lot. It's funny how much an author learns from a book after it's done. And this has been really one of the most interesting things about being a children's book writer for me, is how much I've learned afterwards. And this is the 2nd book. Here's the 1st book right here. My publisher tells me this book has sold 31,000 copies.
It's excellent.
It's a miracle, a miracle. And so this is really kind of a document about the dog's life and everything like that. And after people read this book, they say, well, who took care of the dog? I mean, who took him around and do all that? And I say, you know what? The dog was on his own. He did everything on his own. He went everywhere without a master, without a leash, or without anything. And that's the point here, is that this dog lived in a more generous, easier world than we have here, and he could do incredible things on his own. I mean, after all, he traveled all over the United States on mail trains all by himself. Holy cow. So this book attempts to tell some stories that could have happened to the dog based on the way the dog lived, what the dog did, and the times that the dog was in. I mean, there's a story in here about, very simply, he goes to Cloverdale, California, which is as far west as the dog went. I grew up in California. I have no idea where Cloverdale is, except it's north of the Golden Gate Bridge. So he gets off the train and he's sniffing around and looking at the grass and the flowers in the train station, and a little girl comes and takes him home to her house, which is right over there, and introduces him to the mom. Mom gives the dog some milk and something to eat, and the little girl takes the dog outside and reads him her favorite book, until you hear, Oni, Oni, come on, we're going. Gotta come back to the train. And the dog runs off, and the little girl is so sad because the dog's gone. The next day she says to her mom, I love that dog, Mom. I want to write him a letter. Okay, honey, write him a letter. Here's a paper and pencil. I got a stamp. And so she writes him a letter, and Mom puts the address, Oni, Post Office, Albany, New York, and puts it in the mail, and the dog gets it. His first letter, the first letter to him.
That's great.
So then, because the dog traveled all over the country, that means that the dog can't help but go to one of the train stations in Chicago. There's 6 at the time. So the dog comes in from Albany to Union Station and gets on the cart and goes over to Grand Central or Dearborn and gets on another train and goes. So one day the dog finds himself at the South Side Station, which at that time was the Illinois Central Station. So everybody's getting off the train. Where are they going? The dog just kind of tags along, and suddenly they're in a park and there are ponds and flowers. He's at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, and he goes around and looks at everything. He takes a ride on the lagoon with a family, and then next he knows, he's on the Midway, and a tall man with white hair comes up to him and says, huh, well, let's see who you are here, Pooch. And he looks at the dog's tags and it says Oni. Huh, well, Oni from Albany, I'm Tom Edison, and I'm from New Jersey. You want to take a ride on Mr. Ferris's wheel? Well, the Ferris wheel was the first time it was ever at the Chicago World's Fair. And Thomas Edison was at the fair because his newest invention, the kinetoscope, the first motion picture player, black and white, fine grain negative, put your eyes in the thing, push the button, and you look at film for the first time ever. Holy cow. So he and Edison get together and take a ride on Mr. Ferris's wheel.
That's awesome. Oni is such an endearing character, and it just introduces children to so much of our history, so many things. We're just so honored to have you as an award winner. That's why you're being looked at and considered for the Mom's Choice Hall of Fame.
I want to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I believe you should be there. I really do.
You'll vote for me?
I will.
Oh, good.
I will. I love
Denise
your
is
book.
going to vote for me. What about you? Are you going to vote for me? The cameraman is going to vote for me. Now if I can get the lights to vote for me, I'm in.
You're in.
I got to tell you one last thing about the book. The dog is staying at the Wyoming Hotel in Laramie, Wyoming. He's on the couch sleeping right here. And a girl comes. Now, she's a teenage girl and she's going to Chicago. And I was terrified when I first had this idea and wondered if I could get away with this. I've got a teenage runaway from Laramie, Wyoming to Chicago to change her life. She says her folks died. Her aunt and uncle are so mean to her it makes her teeth hurt, and she runs away from home. She meets the dog and they go on the train to Chicago. And the dog goes back to Albany and the girl goes on to her new life in Chicago, Illinois. Isn't that wonderful?
It is.
And I got away with it. There isn't anybody who said, how come you got a runaway teenager in your book? That's not good. That's not a good model for children. But it's the truth.
It is.
It's really sad.
Right.
So, what else can I tell you?
I think you've covered pretty much the whole thing. So we're just honored to have you with us. We want to thank you. And if we want to purchase your books, we can find them.
Well, my publisher has a website, GreatPlainsPress.com. They're sold in independent bookstores, and the independent people have been really good to us. You can go to Barnes & Noble and Borders and order them. And they have them in almost every train museum in the country.
All right. Well, we will definitely be looking for them and more to come.
Now, I got one more time? Okay. One more thing? Do I got time?
Okay.
He's very good to me.
I know. He is.
Write to somebody in your state and say you want an Oni stamp made. Oni has been approved to be a stamp, but he hasn't gone through the committee process and all the political and all that sort of stuff. So if everybody in the country writes to the post office and says, we want an Oni stamp, maybe somebody will listen to you. Or, no, I shouldn't tell you about her because she'd get too much mail and she'd be mad at me. Okay. I know the historian of the U.S. Postal Service. Nobody has been better to me than her. Thank you, Meg.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dirk.
Thanks for coming.